Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Fabian. Welcome to our webinar for health professionals looking to relocate to New Zealand. I'm a licensed advisor at New Zealand Shores Immigration. We are an immigration consultancy with offices in New Zealand and South Africa, and a large team of licensed advisors who successfully assisted over 22,000 migrants, I believe, make the move to New Zealand since 2009. Our panelists today, we have my colleague Charlotte Stockman, who's a senior licensed advisor at New Zealand Shores. Charlotte will provide insights into the latest Immigration New Zealand updates and upcoming changes. More specifically, she will discuss the visa pathways to New Zealand, including, of course, the Green List residence pathway, which has been New Zealand's streamlined pathway to residency for medical professionals for the last 3 years. Now, if anyone has any questions, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Some of our team will reply in writing during the presentation, but we will dedicate some time at the end of the presentation to address the rest of your questions. And first, let me turn to our guest, Prudence Thompson, who's a director at Accent Health Recruitment. Prudence, please, what can you tell our viewers about Accent, your company, and how your team can help with the employment aspects of New Zealand relocation?
Oh, good morning, morena, everyone, from a very sunny day in Christchurch. It's 9 o'clock on Monday morning. We're based at the centre of the South Island and we recruit for all of New Zealand, so the North and the South Island. We're a free service and it's our job to get you a job, and we also help with relocation, resettlement, registration, doing your references, updating your resume, pretty much everything, beginning with the letter R. So we help you with the job first and foremost, and after that we help you transition into New Zealand. So we're a free service, and I've got myself, Kristen, Hayley and Mel who help you out with the whole process.
Awesome. Thank you, Prudence. So you guys are based in beautiful Christchurch. Do you recruit for the whole of New Zealand? Any specific areas at the moment?
We do. We recruit for, so that's sign language for New Zealand. We recruit for the North and the South Island, East and West Coast, private and public. So we've got a really great list of jobs at the moment for GPs, specialists, mental health nurses, theatre nurses, and some allied health professionals, as well as midwives and anaesthetic technicians.
Okay, so these would be the key job opportunities at the moment.
Yeah, they do fluctuate throughout the year. There was a slowdown on recruitment last year. We're seeing this pick up slightly, but more with theatre and mental health nurses, some allied health professionals, but also very much GPs, specialist consultants, psychiatrists, anaesthetists, and people who are very much generalists in their profession.
Excellent. Now, one of the key requirements for medical professionals is to become registered with the relevant occupational board in New Zealand. Can you tell us a bit about this, how you guys helped, the cost involved, current timeframes?
Right. So every registration board has a different cost, time frame and process. Medical counsel for doctors takes 20 working days minimum, but we usually find it takes 2 months from start to finish to get your registration in New Zealand. The cost will vary for each board. Nurses Council takes 2 months, physio board takes about 10 to 15 days, anaesthetic technicians 10 to 15 days, midwives a couple of months. Again, it depends how quickly you process the application from your board, your references and your documentation, as to how quickly it comes through. We can look at expediting a lot of this. Doctors need a job offer generally to get registration, but we find that the registration boards are really good to deal with.
Excellent. So it's a good point you raised. Doctors are the only exception that in most cases, or to facilitate registration, you need a job offer first. Is that right?
Yes, in most cases, yep. Yep.
Okay. Would it still be valuable to look into the process before you get the job? And how
Oh, absolutely. We want everyone to get their registration well underway prior to interview across all registration and occupations. A lot of places require an English language test, that's IELTS or OET. And you guys, I'm sure, will talk about that from an immigration perspective. The bar's quite high for registration for doctors for their OET or IELTS if you haven't come from a country where English is a first language.
Excellent. Now, you've been in this industry for a long time, like ourselves. How would you say the current immigration settings are? Have there been, well, I believe they have been designed to facilitate and to enhance attractivity to our country. But from a recruiter's perspective, how do you feel the employer's take on visas and everything is?
Really good. So employers are of the understanding that it'll take 2 or 3 months to get a visa, but in fact, it often takes a little shorter than that, which is really good. With yourselves processing it, you'd require similar documents that we need for registration and employment. So we work beautifully together. For example, if an employer needs references, the registration needs references, and sometimes immigration needs references, we use that one same document across the board. So it works very, very well.
Awesome. Well, it's a really nice segue into Charlotte's presentation. I'm going to share our screen now.
So today we're just going to go over what it looks like to migrate to New Zealand through the visa process. So there's a few key things that we're going to talk about, how to prepare, which Prudence has largely already covered. The big thing is registration for our healthcare workers. What is an accredited employer work visa, and what are your residency pathways? So just a little bit about us. We were founded in 2009. We have 11 licensed advisors, and some of our advisors have worked for both Immigration New Zealand and as immigration advisors for us, which gives them a really diverse knowledge. So they have in-depth knowledge about how immigration actually work internally. So that gives us a bit of an edge over some of our competitors. Our team is incredibly diverse, which is indicative of the New Zealand workplace in general. So we have 8 nationalities. Only 3 of us were actually born in New Zealand. The rest of our team have subsequently migrated and obtained residence or citizenship themselves. So they know what going through that process looks like, they know what it feels like, and they can empathize with you because they've done it themselves. Fabian is one of our migrant employees, and he's been in New Zealand for quite some time, but he knows exactly what that process looks and feels like. We also do assist with Australia. We're not talking about Australia today, but if your New Zealand plans don't pan out, please do feel free to reach out. We also have a multi-country presence. So we have offices in both New Zealand, and then we have offices in South Africa as well, which means we can help people pretty much 24/7 as we've got both time zones covered really well. So there's a few key parts that you have to prepare before you can actually move to New Zealand. So as Prudence mentioned, occupational registration is a must. It is a legal requirement to actually work in New Zealand, which means Immigration New Zealand will not approve a visa to you until you have your occupational registration. If you submit a visa application early, so let's say you've got your job offer, but your occupational registration hasn't yet been approved or finalised, Immigration New Zealand will decline your visa. So it is really important that you get that one ticked off first. A lot of our documentation does cross over for what you need it for a visa and what you need for your occupational registration and searching for employment. So we, as an immigration consultancy, we prepare people to have the full package of documentation, ideally before they even start searching for jobs, just because it can make things happen a little bit faster. But if you are already working through that process, that's not to worry. We can still catch you up really quickly to make sure that you are document ready to go ahead with a visa application once your occupational registration is secured and once you've got a job offer. I will just add, Prudence and her team are incredible at what they do. We refer pretty much all of our healthcare workers to her that we know she can work with. They will hold your hand throughout the process. They will present you to employers who are looking, and they will be able to just give you guidance on what sets you up best to get that job offer. So make sure you do reach out to them to help through that process of searching for employment. So we'll talk quickly about the accredited employer work visa. Now, this is the only work visa that New Zealand has for skilled migrants. For the vast majority of people in this group, you're likely to go ahead with a residency visa first, but for various reasons, you may look to apply for an accredited employer work visa first. That could be because your residence may take longer to process. So some people may have health or character concerns or a bit of an interesting situation, which means residence is going to take longer to process than a work visa. So in some cases, we will recommend that you go ahead for an accredited employer work visa. If you are a care worker, such as an aged care worker, you will need to come out to New Zealand first on that accredited employer work visa. Most people listening to this will be granted 5-year work visas outright, providing that you have a permanent offer of employment in New Zealand. Those people who get 3-year work visas tend to be our aged care workers, so you do come in on a shorter duration, but you can apply for residence within 2 years typically if you are an aged care worker. Accredited employer work visas allow you to bring your family with you to New Zealand. So if you have a partner moving to New Zealand with you, they are able to obtain a partnership work visa, which is an open work visa that allows them to work for any employer in any location for as little or as many hours per week as they wish. And your children can come with you as well. So depending on age, your children will either enter into New Zealand on a visitor visa. So if they're below 5, they will get a visitor visa that's granted for the same duration as your work visa. If they're over 5, they will get a student visa, and that allows them to study in New Zealand as domestic students. So education here in New Zealand for state schools is virtually free. You pay roughly about $100 to $200 per child per year as a school donation. So on that work visa, your children are entitled to attend school for the incredibly low rate as well. You are also entitled to public funded healthcare. So anyone coming into New Zealand on a visa which is 2 years or longer is able to have free access to free healthcare in New Zealand, which is an amazing bonus. There's a couple steps that an employer has to go through before they can support you through that accredited employer work visa process. The first step, and this does apply to residents as well, is your employer must be accredited. So an accredited employer has gone through a pretty easy process with Immigration New Zealand to be deemed a fit employer to hire migrants. So it is a really good thing. It's not an expensive process. It's not document heavy for them. So if they haven't already got accreditation, we can give them guidance in that space. But if they are perhaps asking you questions about it, just reiterate that you have heard it's not a difficult thing to obtain. Then you can always reach out to the likes of us to have that conversation with that employer as well. An employer has to pay for the accreditation fee. That cannot be passed on to the migrant. So if you have an employer suggesting that you pay for it to help them through the process, you have to say, no, this is up to you. And once an employer has received accreditation, Immigration New Zealand have deemed them compliant with immigration law and employment law. So they have been found to have no breaches in that space. Once they've got accreditation, they then go on to submit a job check. For our healthcare workers, that's a really straightforward and really quick process. It takes probably about 24 hours at the moment to get a job check approved. Again, the employer must pay for it. And the job check, what it does for our healthcare workers is it solely checks that the employment agreement and the job description that you are being given is compliant with employment law here in New Zealand. The job check generates what we call a job token, which is basically just a fancy word for a special link that allows you to apply for your work visa. So those 2 steps have to be gone through first. Once the employer has done both of those, you can then apply for your accredited employer work visa and your family's visas. So when you're applying for an accredited employer work visa, the documentation is quite similar to that of a residence application. You must demonstrate your competency, and for most people listening today, that will be in the form of your occupational registration. You also have to meet health and character requirements, so you have to be able to demonstrate that you are of good health and good character to move to New Zealand. And in some cases, you may need to do an English language test, but that's not all that common for the likes of you attending today. If you get to New Zealand on an accredited employer work visa and you decide, actually, I really don't like working here, you are not tied to your employer. There is a process called a job change, which you can go through to then change employers while you're on that work visa. Your work visa will state that you have to work for the employer who has supported you through that accreditation job check process. It will stipulate a location, but those two things can be changed. So please don't ever feel like you're stuck if you are on an accredited employer work visa. So in terms of our residency visas, the vast majority of people that will migrate under what we call tier 1 of the green list. So the green list it's a long-term skill shortage list that has a whole lot of occupations on it that Immigration New Zealand have deemed to be of shortage in New Zealand. However, there are other pathways. So some people may decide to migrate under the skilled migrant category, and that would potentially be because it may be easier or faster for you. You may have a partner who is a New Zealand citizen, which means you can migrate really quickly. Prudence could still help you with the job, but you wouldn't be relying on the job to get your visa. So we won't talk about that in depth, and we're not going to talk about the skilled migrant category in depth, but if you feel like those options do apply, please do feel free to reach out to us. For our aged care workers, again, we're not going to dive into that too deeply today, but there is a sector agreement, which means anyone who falls under that care workforce pathway can apply for residence after 2 years in New Zealand. If all else fails, there is also the investment visas and the entrepreneurship visas. So again, if all of this doesn't sound like it appeals to you too greatly, you can reach out to us so we can chat you through those options as well. So the green list, as I mentioned, it is a shortage list of occupations that we need in New Zealand. All healthcare workers fall under tier 1 of the green list, which means you are eligible to apply for a residency visa outright. You can skip that work visa stage, come in on a straight to residence visa the minute you've got a job offer and your occupational registration. There is a few things you have to be mindful of. So typically you have to be 55 or younger to apply. So when we say 55 inclusive, that is up until the day you turn 56. You will possibly need to pass an English language test or demonstrate your English proficiency in another way, such as work experience or qualifications. There are wage thresholds attached as well. So the minimum you can be paid is what we call our median wage, which is $33.54 an hour. However, the job offer also has to be market rate. So if you're a doctor and your typical salary, for example, is 250,000 New Zealand dollars a year, an employer cannot just pay you median wage, because median wage works out to about $65,000 per year. And Prudence and her team will make sure that whatever is on that employment agreement in terms of salary is market rate. So there's always a bit of a myth out there that employers can offer migrants less money. Not true at all. And we will make sure as a team that that is the case, that you're getting a fair rate for your occupation. With your occupation, your main specific requirements for healthcare workers is that you do have an occupational registration. Obviously, your registration will have different things that you have to prove, which could be based on qualification or work experience. But for Immigration New Zealand, they will deem you competent for that role once you hold that occupational registration in New Zealand. So the straight to resident visa, once you enter New Zealand and activate that visa, you have virtually the same rights as a New Zealand citizen, just minus the passport. So you can enroll in KiwiSaver, which is our government retirement scheme. You are able to vote. You can purchase a home within a 12-month period. If you want to purchase sooner, there is a special process to go through that's quite quick and quite inexpensive. As I mentioned, you've got access to free healthcare in New Zealand, and your family can join you under that straight to resident visa. So the whole family is included in one application. So there's one application fee. You don't pay per family member like some countries like Australia. So if you're a general practitioner like Vanessa here from Singapore, she would apply under the straight to resident visa because we know she's got no health issues, she's got no character issues, and her application will go through quite quickly. So when I say quickly, typically we're seeing most straight to resident visas process in about a 4 to 6 week window at the moment. There is always outliers to that, and it can change depending on how busy Immigration New Zealand is, and it can even change depending on time of year. So we're at the end of September now, and we are moving into that Christmas period where we typically do see things start to slow down a little bit. And that's because Immigration New Zealand typically has a high higher number of applications from roughly about end of October onwards. And then they do also close for a 2-week period over Christmas. So don't expect anything to be particularly quick if you're submitting an application in December, just because you will get caught up with that slower part of the year, but we wouldn't really expect anything to go too far past 8 to 10 weeks at the most, generally. So from us, the next step, if you're interested, is please do reach out to us for an eligibility assessment. We can map out what that migration pathway looks like for you. And then we will pass you over also to Prudence and her team to discuss your job opportunities. Once you have reached out to both New Zealand Shores and Accent Health Recruitment, individually, we will offer you personal consultations to go through what that looks like for you. So from us, it will be what that visa process looks like for you. And from Prudence and her team, it will obviously be what the job search process will look like for you. And then the minute you're ready to go, you can let us know and we can start working on your visa documentation, and Prudence and her team can start working on that job search process for you. So please do reach out. Both of our email addresses are listed there. So we've got health@newzealandshores.com and info@accent.net.nz. And I will hand back to Prudence because I'm sure she's got a few things she'd like to add in there at the end.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Charlotte. We've been, as partner companies, we've been working with Accent Health for many, many years now. I can't even recall, but things have always been great. This is a fantastic team to work with. We've got a great synergy working together, and I cannot recommend them highly enough. One quick question that springs to mind immediately, Charlotte, is the age limit 55 inclusive. Is that the end of the road for, I don't know, a 57-year-old doctor wanting to relocate?
That's a really good question, Fabian. Sorry, as I was talking, I was thinking I do need to mention age waivers, and then I kept talking without going back to it. So yes, you can apply for an age waiver. So if you are older than 56, so when we say 55 inclusive, it means you can typically apply in a normal manner up until the day you turn 56. However, we do have a 100% success rate with doctors, nurses, allied health staff that Prudence and her team have recruited in obtaining age waivers. So an age waiver is definitely a longer process, but effectively what it is we request to the Minister of Immigration New Zealand to do us a favour basically and allow us to apply for a resident visa because you are of great need in New Zealand. So we haven't yet had a health worker declined for an age waiver, and at the moment one of my colleagues has just had an age waiver accepted for a doctor in their 70s. So it's definitely possible. It is slightly longer, and in this situation we would probably recommend you do come out on the work visa first. For a couple reasons. One, because an age waiver can take about 4 to 6 months to process by the time the minister has assessed our request, and then by the time your residency visa processes. And two, if you are already in New Zealand and working, it does give us a bit more ammunition with that request because you're already here, you're already doing the job, you're already settling into New Zealand. So look, if you do get an employer who's happy to wait that 6 month time frame, absolutely fine, we can still apply and we'd still be very confident that it would get approved. But it's just a conversation you'd have to have with your recruiter and you'd have to have with your employer to see what their time frame looked like for arrival.
Thank you. I would think 6 months is a realistic time frame for an employer to wait for a qualified health professionals. What's your experience with this, Prudence?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of doctors and specialist medical professionals who are in demand, the employer will wait up to 6 to 9 months for them to arrive. We usually say be ready to come out 6 to 8 weeks after your interview, depending on your area of need. The employer might be planning for a maternity leave, so they've got 6 months notice before you need to be in New Zealand. But usually 6 to 8 weeks, be ready, but it comes down to individual. I did have a GP, 72-year-old wonderful GP who's been offered a job 12 months in advance. So he's got 12 months to prepare to come to New Zealand, which is plenty of time.
Great. One thing we haven't discussed either is bringing your parents over. So you got a job, you got registration, you moved to New Zealand, you've become a resident. Are there any visa categories to bring your parents over to New Zealand after you're here, whether on a temporary or on a permanent basis, Charlotte?
Yeah, so the parent options have actually just opened up quite significantly as of today, which is really exciting. So there are two residency options. One is an investment-based visa. And the minute you've got your own residence, your parents can apply for that. They need to be able to prove they have 1.5 million New Zealand dollars in total and be willing to invest 1 million of that into acceptable investments for 4 years. It is a very popular category, and often with exchange rates works out quite favorably for a number of our migrants' parents. The second option is what we call the parent category, and this requires you to hold your own resident visa for 3 years before you can actually sponsor your parents. The criteria is based on your income or your income and your partner's income. So it's you have to meet a certain threshold, and that threshold has to have been met for 2 out of the 3 years prior to application. The catch with this one is it's quite hard to actually be selected and invited to apply. So it is a ballot system, incredibly randomized. I've had some clients get pulled out of that ballot really quickly, and then I've had other clients who've been sitting in that ballot for 18 months. So it is a little bit of a tricky one, but as of today, they have also just released what we're calling the Parent Boost Visa. So that's a visitor visa which can be held for up to 10 years. So it can allow your parents to be in New Zealand on that visa for a 10-year period. So if you are interested, please do reach out. I can send you a really great summary of what those visa options look like.
Fantastic. Thank you, Charlotte. I'll see a few questions about the cost of using an immigration consultancy. What are you looking at roughly for a medical professional?
So our fee does vary depending on often how many people are in your family. Is there any complications with your situation? Do you need a health waiver? Do you need a character waiver? Is there something unique which is going to take a little bit more work than the norm? On average, to use us could be anywhere from 3,000 to 4,500 New Zealand dollars. So that's our fee. And then the government fee is an additional for a straight to residence application, 6,450 New Zealand dollars.
And that includes the entire family, or same fee, it's one or a family.
Okay. Yeah, both our fee and the government fee are per family. But we do quote on a case-by-case basis. So we don't just, have one set fee that we charge everyone.
Thanks, Charlotte. Prudence, Accent Health does not charge any fees to the candidate. How does that work?
No, so we're free, and because we own Accent, we generally set our fees to the employer. Often with hospices or not-for-profit organisations, we will lower our fee to make the candidate more attractive. But with a lot of the large hospitals that we're contracted to, the district health boards or Te Whatu Ora, the fee is set and we're on their preferred supply list, which is pretty awesome to be on that. The preferred supply list means that we get the first right of option to recruit someone for that, and we get sent a list of jobs every morning.
Excellent. Thank you, Prudence. What would be the first step for someone looking to move to New Zealand? I'm going to turn to Prudence, and then I'll let you have a few words about this, Charlotte. First step when you look at relocating.
So the first step is to get your resume or CV ready. Once you've got your CV ready, we then critique it. We ask for copies of ID documents and training certificates, etc. And then we do reference checks depending on when you're due to come to New Zealand. If you're imminent in the next 6 months, we will start reference checking, get your resume ready, do some interview training as well. And we've got a really neat, video interview, practice interview that we can send through. And if you want a copy of a resume or a copy of this video interview, just email info@accent.net.nz with the subject title of what you're looking for, whether it's a sample CV or a video interview, and we can send that back. So once we get your CV up to date, so your resume, we've got you registered, we've got your reference checked, we put you forward to a position in a location, a specialty, timing that is appropriate for you. So if, for example, you're a GP, and you want to work in a large city practice or a small rural practice, we'll put you forward to the correct position at the right time. It can start with an informal chat, and that informal chat can be 15 minutes and they'll offer you a job, or it can be 1.5 hour formal chat. And as I say, it's a bit like a first date. Be prepared. have questions ready and look presentable and be ready to chat and get to know your potential employer.
So talking of this presentation and being prepared, how do you guys assist with the interview prep? Are there
Yeah.
key things to know when you're preparing to interview with a New Zealand employer?
Yeah, so we can send you a whole list of potential questions that you might be asked. We'll talk through the Māori health in New Zealand and how that impacts on your care and understanding cultural sensitivity in New Zealand, and a little bit about how to prepare best for an interview and a lot of competency-based questions. The interviews are usually very, very relaxed, very informal. But we have had nurses ask being asked how the heart works, or GPs being asked what to do in anaphylaxis, drug reactions, patient interactions. So it does depend entirely on the employer. We generally know what the interview is going to be like, but sometimes the panel changes and the questions will change as well.
Okay, great. One for you, perhaps, Charlotte. What would you say the pros and cons of job hunting onshore versus offshore? We have a lot of clients, medical professionals and not, suggesting to come for a visit to New Zealand, not just for job hunting, but to get a feel for the different regions and where they might like to relocate to. So what's your experience with this?
I think from a perspective of purely coming to check out New Zealand, if you can afford to do so and it's within your, means of time to be able to come out for a bit of a look around, I would recommend doing so. Purely because you can kind of get a feel of different regions, you can get a feel of where you want to live in New Zealand. Ultimately, you can do as much internet research as you like, and a lot of my clients have never moved to New Zealand when they get their job offers and their visas. But if you're less likely to be disappointed, I think, if you come out and you find an area you really like. However, bear in mind that just because you do really like a particular area doesn't mean you're necessarily going to get a job in that particular area. So I'd probably rank your top 3 to 5. And have a good look around the North Island and the South Island as well. On the job searching front, for everyone in this group, I really don't think it's probably going to make too much of a difference whether you're onshore or offshore. In my experience, and Prudence will definitely back this up, most employers in the healthcare sector are pretty happy to interview on Zoom. So I don't think it's going to make a difference to be in New Zealand versus out.
Great. It's just a matter of finding a suitable time, considering the difference, the time zone difference between the UK or the US, for
You
instance.
may be doing your interview in the early morning or the late evening or the middle of the night, potentially. But if you want to move, it's all worth it for sure.
Okay. Thanks for that. Prudence, we've had a few questions during registration and here as well about advanced nurse practice or nurse practitioner positions or leadership roles in the nursing sector. Is that something that you could potentially assist with?
Look, we have done in the past. A lot of times we find that nurse practitioners, they do have quite a different pathway to registration in New Zealand, which is a little bit frustrating for us, to be honest. But you do need to come to New Zealand, work as a registered nurse for 1 year, whilst doing your application for nurse practitioner status. We've probably recruited maybe 5 or 10 nurse practitioners over the last few years, so not a great number, but we do welcome CVs from nurse practitioners, and we can talk you through the process of getting registration. As far as senior or leadership opportunities, I just got an email yesterday, actually, which was awesome, from a nurse I recruited to a private hospital in Auckland, and she's just been offered a charge nurse position. Now, she came to New Zealand, worked as a staff nurse for 2 years, and now she's got her charge nurse opportunity. So not so often. We do look for specialised nurses, for example, cardiac theatre nurses, orthopaedic theatre nurses, mental health nurses, and forensics, alcohol and drug, child and adolescent. But as far as leadership positions, you really do need to get to know the New Zealand health system before becoming a leader or a manager.
Great. And we've seen a few people sort of almost fresh out of school or fresh out of their intern period, wanting to relocate to New Zealand, is there a minimum requirement in terms of work experience, not just for registration purposes, but also employers' expectations in New Zealand? Would you say someone needs to have at least 2 or 3 or 4 years before they're considering moving?
Yeah, it depends on the occupation. Anesthetic technicians, really good theatre nurses, mental health nurses, and midwives, and GPs and doctors, we consider with 1 year of experience or 2, but we would prefer 5 years experience just to really consolidate your knowledge and training in your home country.
Thank you very much for this. Charlotte, from a visa perspective, what would a typical documentation suite look like? What do I need to prepare for, and how can New Zealand Shores assist?
So the main things you're going to need to have, obviously a passport. You can't move country or apply for a visa without a passport. You will need birth certificates. Those birth certificates have to be what we call unabridged. So they have to have both parents' names on them. If you're missing a parent's name, we do have to provide evidence or an explanation as to why. If you're including a partner, you need to be able to prove that you are in a genuine and stable relationship with your partner. You may need English language tests depending where in the world you come from or where in the world you've studied. If you don't need an English language test, you're going to have to prove that you can speak English, and that may be through work experience or qualifications. You will need medicals for Immigration New Zealand, so there are particular approved physicians who are able to undertake those medicals. If you get your medicals done elsewhere, Immigration New Zealand will not accept them. You will need character checks, so police certificates from countries you have lived in and countries you hold citizenship. What we do as immigration advisors is we look at your particular situation and we will decide what is required. Do you have children who are over the age of 19 and you need to prove dependency? Have you got children that you need to prove custody for example? Is there a health condition which may flag something with immigration, which means that we have to apply for a medical waiver? So we go through your entire situation and we make sure that all of the documentation you have on hand is what is going to be needed for visa approval. We submit complete applications. I belong to a number of Facebook groups about migrating to New Zealand, and I often see people posting, immigration's asked for this, immigration's asked for that, my visa's taken 12 weeks to process, and often it's because you are not submitting complete applications. So a decision-ready application, which is what we would submit, or we would be telling you that you're not quite submitting a decision-ready application, and that would be a decision we'd make for various factors. But a decision-ready application for residents under the straight to residence category should be taking about 4 to 6 weeks. So ultimately, it's just often peace of mind that that application is going in, is complete, it has everything a case officer needs to make that decision quickly. So that's really the greatest benefit that we can offer, is making sure that your visa processes quickly and smoothly, because we have the knowledge and experience to look for all those little fish hooks that may pop up in your personal situation that could cause a visa to process slower if the right information is not provided.
So you mentioned an age limit for dependent children there just now, 19. Can you tell us a bit about the difference between temporary visa applications and residency, and what sort of schooling are kids eligible for under those visas?
So under temporary visas, so the likes of our accredited employer work visa, a child can obtain a student visa up to the age of 19 inclusive. Once they're 19, they can only obtain a visitor visa up until the age of 24. However, for residency, children up to the age of 24 inclusive, so up to the day they turn 25, can be included in a residency application. However, the older they get, within that 19 to 25 age range will dictate what documentation you have to prove. So past the age of 19, under a residence application, immigration has different thresholds as to what determines a child to be dependent. So your child does have to be dependent. They have to be single. They cannot have a partner, and you must be supporting them financially in some way, whether it's you're paying for schooling or they're living at home and you're helping with living costs. So that's a really key factor as well. However, the bonus to the straight to residence application is that if you have got children who are kind of in that 19 to 25 age bracket, they can be included on your residence application. And the minute residence is approved, they are able to study at university as domestic students. So you're probably looking, depending on the course, at somewhere between 6 to 12,000 New Zealand dollars per year, as opposed to international fees, which if you come in on an accredited employer work visa and your child is in that 19 to 25 age bracket, you're going to have to pay international fees for them to study. So instead of 6 to 12,000 roughly, you're probably looking at a minimum of $20,000 per year, depending on the course. So definitely best if you have adult children to go through that straight to resident visa first.
Thank you, Charlotte. Very nice transition into my next question as well. Studying in New Zealand, we've had a few inquiries about people wanting to study towards becoming a nurse, or nurses wanting to study a specialty area of nursing in New Zealand. Is that a potential pathway into New Zealand?
Yeah, it is, and it's a really good pathway. So we've got a lot of Americans and people from the UK looking at this as an option at the moment. One, because often it's cheaper to study in New Zealand, even as an international student. But two, it can, particularly if you're in a bit of a grey area with your occupational registration, there are a number of courses available that you can come in and study, which will help put you on a pathway to obtaining that occupational registration in New Zealand. We have, like, nurses is a really good example. We have a number of international nurses looking to come out and study master's degrees relating to nursing, which then directly feed into occupational registration with the Nursing Council. So it does, particularly if you are finding it hard to get a job offer at the moment, but you're really keen to move as soon as possible, it can be a really good way to get you into the country, have your family in New Zealand with you, and put you on a path to residence. And then hopefully by the time that you've finished studying, we may be seeing a little bit more freer recruitment happening in your occupation.
Thank you, Charlotte. Turning to you now, Prudence. I believe you worked overseas for some time, didn't you?
Yes, I worked in the UK and also in Bahrain in the Middle East, and loved my time working overseas, and can draw on my experience of what it was like to go to a new country, work in a different country, and come back. It was I've been recruiting now for 26 years, Accent's 21 now. So it's a bit distant, my nursing memories, but still very much aware of the challenges and the highs and lows of coming to New Zealand, mostly highs.
So what would a typical job offer look like for New Zealand? Your typical work week, 40, 37 hours, I'm not sure, shift work, and any potential culture clash when you land into a New Zealand workplace?
I think there will be some cultural clash, but I recommend coming to New Zealand a couple of weeks before you get here, so you can just start to understand some of our colloquialisms and understand some of the ways we do things. We're a bit more laid back. You know, for example, when you buy a car, it's take the keys, no worries, mate, take it out for the afternoon. And people find that quite strange. When you move into a house, sometimes the landlord might say, oh, I've got a spare bed if you want that. Or your workmates might say, I'll come round for a barbecue, bring a plate. When they say bring a plate, it means bring a plate of food. So bring a plate means some cookies, even a bag of crisps or chips. You know, it doesn't have to be too fancy. And often it's good to just clarify. And when someone says something you're not sure, just say, can I just check that's what you're meaning? And yeah, coming to New Zealand, there are differences, pleasant surprises. Some things we're a bit laid back on, but that's kind of a good thing. But with technology and, you know, the way the world is now with the internet and Amazon and Temu, which I don't really like, but it happens. You can get pretty much anything in New Zealand. And we've got IKEA coming to New Zealand on the 3rd of December to Auckland, which is a bit exciting.
So taking a step back, why New Zealand? Why would you want to move to New Zealand from
Yeah.
the UK, the US, Singapore, wherever it might be? What are you going to find here?
There's a Māori saying in Te Reo called he tangata, he tangata, he tangata, which is the people, the people, the people. So from the moment you land, customs will welcome you. The baggage handlers will assist you. The taxi drivers will chat to you. Your accommodation will offer you all sorts of extra help you didn't even think you needed. You're going into the shops. People are curious but helpful. and they give you a lot of extra assistance. So it's the people. I think the weather is really good as well. We have had quite a sort of a mild winter, and we've just started our summer now with our daylight savings. It is the negatives. It is a long way from home, a long way from your parents if they're still around, and family and friends, but they can hopefully visit. But it's the work-life balance is really great. The salaries are good. House prices and cost of living is rising everywhere in New Zealand and around the world, but I think it's equal to Australia or the UK, certainly.
100%. I mean, being a migrant myself, as Charlotte mentioned, I landed in New Zealand sort of on holiday just over 15 years ago, and often, yeah, they couldn't get rid of me, essentially. I really stayed for the people. That's what blew my mind when I landed here, is how nice the people are. Is that the sort of feedback that you're getting from your client, Charlotte?
Yeah, everyone says people are incredibly friendly, which I think is completely true. I was just laughing at your bring a plate anecdote, Prudence, because I had a client who got told that once, and they then emailed me to say I turned up with an empty plate thinking this person just didn't have enough plates to cater for their guests. So yeah, New Zealand does have some funny colloquialisms, but who doesn't?
Yeah.
New Zealand, I think the thing I love most about living here is our big wide open spaces. So even if you're living in a city, and let's be honest, most New Zealand cities are like large towns for the rest of the world, you've got nature on your doorstep. Within a 20-minute drive, I can be hiking from my house. I can go hiking for 2-3 hours without having to drive too far. I can be at lakes within an hour, the beach within an hour. And that's coming from someone who lives in a landlocked city in New Zealand. So everything is on your doorstep. If you love the great outdoors, you will love New Zealand. I have heard New Zealand referred to the great outdoors, and then countries like, sometimes America and the UK, the great indoors, because they just don't have, depending on where you live, you just don't have that same access to nature. So that's the thing I love most about living here, for sure.
One thing just to add, I was talking to a physio, and we recently did a podcast about working and living in New Zealand, and he had one child born in New Zealand and one child born back in the UK. So they weren't planning on having children, but nature took its course, and they had the child in New Zealand, and then COVID struck, and they had family members they wanted to get back and see. So they went back after 4 years, and he's contacted me and say, we want to come back again, which is fantastic. But he said the difference in the hospital system and birthing, pre and postnatal care of having babies in New Zealand versus the UK, 2 years apart, was really interesting and very favourable for New Zealand, which is great.
Yep, I recall this when I had my own sons. The attention to detail, the personal attention of all the ICU nurses was, yeah, it just blew my mind. Okay, well, this is almost the end of our meeting, guys. Prudence, what's the next step?
Next step, if you're interested, just get into our database, email us and say, this is what I'm planning on doing this week, this month, this year, next century, or next decade, really, and just say, look, this is what I'm planning on doing. Keep me in mind for jobs, and we'll talk you through the process. So email info@accent.net.nz.
Excellent. And Charlotte, what can New Zealand Shores offer as a first step?
Yeah, so please do reach out. Health@newzealandshores.com comes directly to me, so please do send an email. Otherwise, there's a couple of people in the Q&A I've given my personal email to, which is charlotte@newzealandshores.com. Reach out. I think a really good first step is actually figuring out what that visa pathway may look like for you. Do you need the work visa first? Can you apply for straight to residence? Is there anything in your situation that you need to be aware of? And we can map those things out well before you've got a job offer, so that when you do connect with Prudence and her team, you can say, look, this is what New Zealand Shores has told me, this is the visa process, this is how long they think things are going to take, and that can actually assist in your job search as well, just so you know, and you can then pass that information on to an employer as well to say, hey, look, these are the visas I'm eligible for and what timings will be. So please do email. I'd love to hear from all of you. Happy to give everyone a free eligibility assessment. I know some of you have already reached out. If you haven't already, please do, and we can give you a free eligibility assessment and a free consultation. And then if you decide to use our services from there, we can provide you with a quote.